dialogue, truthful dialogue that gets us past the media manipulation of persons, events, and the truths of persons and events.
On this episode of Farrakhan Speaks, the Alex Jones interview.
The nation is not now what it could be if truth, unfettered, would be given to the American people. And perhaps through this dialogue, that might happen. Thank you so much, Mr. Jones, for honoring us with your presence. We have watched you as you have watched us, and I have learned a lot from InfoWars and some of the wonderful things that you have done. And I thought long and hard about accepting the invitation. And you're right, I don't do a lot of interviews, but I thought that this was something special. And so I wanted you to feel completely free, like you were at home. And I want you to ask me the questions that your many listeners would like to know about Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. And there is nothing off limits. You can ask whatever you please, and we'll create the dialogue.
Well, I have to say, thank you for having me in your home and with your family. Driving over here, I talked about some of the reasons that I wanted to interview you. And then when I had a chance to be in your home right before the interview, you basically mirrored what I had to say. So in your own words, I'd like you to really, for the TV viewing audience out there, go over some of the interesting things that you had to say to me and to the audience, because it just dovetailed exactly where I was going. And I have to say, I don't think I've ever had that happen before with an interview. So I'm really glad this is happening here today, because as you know, there are forces that are trying to divide and conquer humanity. And we're really coming to a crossroads where people are being told to choose a side. But I don't think the sides they're telling us to choose are real sides. So I'm trying to get people to think outside the box. And when I spoke to you earlier, that was basically your main focus. So I think this interview is meant to happen for a reason. So thank you so much for giving us the time in your busy schedule. So please, just if you could recapture what you told me in there earlier, it was very interesting.
Well, I first, the idea of dialogue, truthful dialogue, that gets us past the media manipulation of persons, events, and the truths of persons and events. I'm grateful to have an opportunity to talk to your audience as well as my own, because I felt that I've been talking to black people for 60 or more years, and black people understand me pretty well. But white people don't know me and may not understand me. I had a Jewish rabbi in my home, and he was telling me how certain words that I spoke hurt him and them as a people. And I listened carefully to his critique. One of the things about critics if you can really listen to your critics sometimes are better for you than your so-called friends, because your friends tell you what they think you want to hear. But a critic will write about you or talk about you in a way that, if you have wisdom, you look deep into what your critics say. So I went away from that dialogue with the Jewish rabbi, and I started thinking of language and the best and proper use of language to convey ideas. Now, black people, I know because I'm black and I come up from among my people. But to have a chance now to speak to a white audience, mainly who may be conservative in their culture and thoughts and desires, and for me to be able to represent the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to that group and answer questions that they are interested in hearing a truthful answer to, then by this dialogue and these cameras and looking into each other's eyes and understanding that we're two people interested in truth. We're two people that live in the greatest nation on this earth, but the nation is not now what it could be if truth, unfettered, would be given to the American people. And perhaps through this dialogue, that might happen.
Well, that is exactly what I hope to try to discuss with you today. So I'm glad that you're, basically, I guess in the spirit or in your gut, wanting to go the same direction, because this nation is being basically destroyed from within. And while the people of the nation of every race, color, and creed are being played off against each other, these big global multinationals are tax exempt, diplomatic immunity, they can do whatever they want. And then I see the media on both sides, of conservative and liberal, basically turning it all into a big spectacle, everyone fighting with each other. And there's some real beefs and real issues within that fight. But overall, it's synthetic. Above it are the social engineers who are attacking the family. Doesn't matter what color your family is. Who are attacking our jobs, shipping them overseas. Doesn't matter what color your family is. That are trying to bring in medicalized tyranny and these dangerous vaccines I learned about, so many decades ago in your newspaper, and that's been confirmed by medical research to be basically Trojan horses. I mean, there's thousands of issues here, but the bottom line is humanity itself is under attack by the ruling elite, and they are desperately engaged in an attempt to start an artificial revolution in every major nation, not just the United States. They use anthropology in each country to decide how to divide people along real lines, real issues, but artificially getting us fighting with each other. So while we're busy fighting with each other, they steal the whole show. And you're one of the only prominent leaders, be they of any, race, color, creed, we're all the human race, that addresses that there is a conspiracy. So, in your own words earlier, speaking about conspiracy, there are millions of people a year are charged around the world with conspiracy to rob banks, conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to fraud. But how is it that the power elite, it's impossible that they're in a conspiracy?
In the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, his great teacher, Master Farrokhan Muhammad, who came to enliven the black people in particular and raise us from a dead level to give us life spiritually, mentally, morally, economically, intellectually, etc. He taught us that he never used color in this question and answer. He asked the question, who are the 85%? Who are the 10%? And who are the 5%? And in the answers that Mr. Muhammad gave that we study, 85% of the people don't understand the law of cause and effect. And they believe that all of this great wonder is from a mystery God. They don't know that God is as real as you and I sitting across the table from each other. And wherever there is an effect that is real, the cause is just as real, though oftentimes the hidden hand that's manipulating and creating the effect and the circumstances that begin to divide and destroy. This kind of satanic mind is absolutely in control. And that satanic mind is hiding with a mask of humanity and civility, but now it is gradually being exposed. So 10% run 85%. 10% are those that are privileged, those that are blessed with education and some degree of wealth. That 85% don't share. And it doesn't make any difference whether you are white or black or Indian or whatever your ethnicity is, and it doesn't make any difference what your religion is, whether you're Christian or Muslim or Jew. There are those at the top who guide and govern, who are not necessarily the friend of the masses of the people that they are governing. So it is the 5%, are just a small group who know the truth, who understand the law of cause and effect, and they don't believe in a mystery God that's somewhere making things happen. If there's a real evil, then there's a real devil. If there's a real saint, then there's a real good person doing saintly things. So here we are. Now a conspiracy absolutely is in vogue. And I say this humbly, but I've asked certain people who say, well, you're a conspiracy theorist, and they call you the same. I said, but do you read the scriptures of the Bible and Quran? Is not Satan real? Evil is real, so Satan is real. Evil is preponderant in the earth, and that is because the mind of Satan, that is being transmitted through religion, through education, through the economics and politics of the situation, so that Satan is in control of a vast enterprise of institutions that foster ideas that put human beings against themselves and against God and against each other. So there's real conspiracy, and we are in the middle of it as we are dialoguing.
That really is a revolutionary thought, that if you question the establishment, you question what they're saying when they're known liars, you're a conspiracy theorist. That's like saying you're a heretic. Okay, well, if we're a heretic against the system, I guess we're a heretic against the devil. Because this system, undoubtedly, you couldn't call it good. And from my research, that's my concern. The 5%, the 1%, the 1/10 of 1% that actually run and control, manipulate things, they believe they're going to end up winning. They believe that they're getting ahead of people by keeping folks dumbed down. But common sense shows, and just my gut tells me, you don't screw people over and then long-term get away with it. It comes back on you. And I think the people serving this system are some of the most deceived out there, because they know how the world really works, but they've decided to basically try to screw over their fellow humans as if they're going to get ahead by doing that. I mean, just anybody who's God-fearing in their gut level has to know that's a lie.
Well, Mr. Jones, in reality, there are those who go along to get along. And there are those who will take money or position or promises of nearness to power to become an instrument of power. They know what they're doing, but they do not know the vast evil that they are a part of. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, my teacher, said, we are living now in a very dangerous time. He said there never has been a time where on the earth there is 100% dissatisfaction. Whites are dissatisfied, blacks are dissatisfied, there are Jews and Gentiles that are dissatisfied. Well, what is creating the dissatisfaction? It is the deprivation of rights and privileges. It is the deprivation of truth. It is the deprivation of justice. It is the deprivation of equity. It is the deprivation of equality of opportunity that each human being should have to bring out of themselves what God has put within, that they in their person may glorify God and create a world better than the world in which we find ourselves. So the politicians today, I looked at the many Republicans and Democrats that are trying to win the nomination of their party. And it says to me, it's like I don't want to be vulgar, but it's like in any major city, you see women undressed, showing their wares for a John to buy them. And it's like politicians who don't have money but have ideas, and they parade themselves before rich and powerful people to get money, apparently for their ideas that the rich agree with. But the moment that they become what they're looking to become, they find that the rich have an agenda for them, that the rich have something to ask of them, like the John asks of the prostitute. And that's one of the things that I admire about Mr. Trump, because he told them all, I don't want your money. And when a politician does not want money from the rich, he's freer than the others to really do good for the masses of the people. And I think that today we are in the midst of the darkest hour in American history. And so if we don't make the right move with the right people at the right time, the America that we know, we're not going to see it become great again.
I'd like to speak some more, if you would, about Donald Trump, because I personally just had my snapshot view of him, seeing him on TV, shows like The Apprentice. I knew about his businesses and things. But then as he became more and more prominent in the race, and the last 6 months has been in the front runner, I saw the media doing what they've done to you, myself, and many others, really taking over and over again what he said out of context countless times. And it didn't even mean I totally agree with what he was saying, but I could see the fix was in, that they really didn't like him. Then I saw the Republican and Democrats giving money against him. And then I saw him say, hey, we're going to start taxing these big brokerage firms that are tax exempt, make them bring their money back here. We're not going to have NAFTA and GATT one-sided to ship our jobs to other countries. He said, I'm not against China and India, but I'm sorry, there's no way to do business here the way they've set it up. All these multinationals wanted to move overseas, so they wrote laws to make it more, really taking over and over again what he said out of context countless times. And it didn't even mean I totally agree with what he was saying, but I could see the fix was in, that they really didn't like him. Then I saw the Republican and Democrats giving money against him. And then I saw him say, hey, we're going to start taxing these big brokerage firms that are tax exempt, make them bring their money back here. We're not going to have NAFTA and GATT one-sided to ship our jobs to other countries. He said, I'm not against China and India, but you know, I'm sorry, there's no way to do business here the way they've set it up. All these multinationals wanted to move overseas, so they wrote laws to make it more conducive. And that's really where he's got them mad. And so undoubtedly, the establishment is after him. And now he's come out and pointed out that Bill Clinton has settled rape cases and said, you know, forget going after Bill Cosby, let's see Bill Clinton gone after. That tells me right there that he's for real. And then talking to some of his high-level campaign people, they talk about the fact that Trump used to, and he told me this on air, he used to just be focused on business and life. He's just now, the last few years, looking into what's happening and finding out the country's been sold out. I'm not trying to even fully endorse Trump here. All I know is the anger of the power structure towards him is real. And so I think everybody should investigate more why that is. I think it's because he does get on the stage and says, listen, I'm not going to lie, I bought all these people on this stage. That's just how this country works. I don't want to do that. So from your experience in all, you know, tracking the media, experiencing demonization campaigns, it's a big deal to have Louis Farrakhan come out and say, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan come out and say, hey, we should look at Trump. Can you flesh that out and elaborate? Because undoubtedly, they're going to try to, you know, take that and then twist it.
Well, I said recently that if the American people voted for Trump, he could take them into the abyss of hell. He's free, he's rich, he hates political correctness, and rightly so. But he said some things that I would hope that he would get around him persons who could help him, because as a businessman par excellence, he has people around him to help him do business. But if he says, let's go in to Iraq and take the oil, that puts him in the class of those neoconservatives who had a project for a new American century. And they wrote to Bill Clinton and Trent Lott, and they talked about attacking Iraq and taking out Saddam Hussein, not just because he may be in their eyes a dictator and was once on the payroll of the CIA in the war against Iran and Ayatollah Khomeini, but he had become a thorn in their sides, and they wanted to get rid of him.
He kind of become a Trump. He was doing his own thing.
Yes.
That was his crime.
And that is the crime of those who refuse to come under the control of the IMF or the World Bank, who send these people like Mr. Perkins in his book, The Tales of an Economic Hitman, who would go into a small country and tell them how they could improve this and that, but they would have to borrow money. When I was in Nigeria, President Abacha told me that they came to him and offered him billions of dollars to loan. And Mr. Abacha said, I don't need your money because the oil that we have is sufficient to get us to do all the good things that we want to do. Well, a few years later, he's dead. Well, now here, Mr. Trump, if he would look at this project for an American century, and I'm sure you have read their writings where they appeal to Bill Clinton to get rid of Saddam as part of America's foreign policy. He didn't go along with it. And those members of the new American century now got into the inside of government under the Bush administration. And General Wesley Clark, he said he was introduced to a memo in, I think it was 2001, a memo that came from the neoconservatives that they wanted regime change in 7 Islamic countries in 5 years' time. And it started with Iraq and Saddam Hussein, then Syria and Bashar al-Assad, then Lebanon, then Sudan, then Iran, and then Libya. All of those countries now are boiling with internal strife.
And it's a conspiracy, a public one of PNAC, to go in, destabilize, put radicals in, kill the non-radicals, go after the Christians, all of this to then foment a collapse, flood Europe with all these refugees. Some of them will end up being attackers, and then you get an even bigger war on Islam. It's all part of that master plan. You're absolutely right. Trump contradicts himself, and I don't think through being ungenuine. He says, don't go into Iraq. It's a bad idea. But then he says, but let's do what the neocons say and take the oil. I mean, not putting words in your mouth, Minister Farrakhan, but are you saying you're attracted to the fact that he is a maverick and that he says what he's really thinking, but at the same time, you're saying he needs to get the bigger picture to understand what's going on?
If he goes into Iraq and takes the oil, that's a kind of a thuggish mentality. America has the power to do these things, but it will not bring the results that America desires. Bush and the neocons, when they went into Iraq, I warned President Bush that what you are doing and the way you are doing it, you will increase terrorism, you will not diminish it. It proved, my words to him proved correct, and I warned him that the coalition would fall apart from him and he would ultimately have to go it alone. Now here is our president. Now I'm talking about Barack Obama, because the job that President Bush started was not finished. So in comes Obama, and when he was campaigning, he was a new and fresh and beautiful idea, but when he gets into office, he becomes the extension of the policies of the neoconservatives. They surrounded Bush, they surrounded Barack Obama, and now just 2 weeks ago in Washington, there was all of these people who are behind the drones. And they were saying that in these drones that go out to kill people that America feels are a threat to their policies, none of that happens without Barack Obama's signature. So you took a man, we gave you the best that we had, but you took him, you gave him the Peace Prize, and then the neocons and that shadow government begins to guide the policies of America. And now here's what we have. Now, I'm going to come back to Mr. Trump in a minute. Hillary Clinton was the biggest advocate for the destruction of Libya and Muammar Gaddafi. Gaddafi was my friend. I know him as a revolutionary. He was against America's foreign policy objectives. and he stood out. That man died, but he led his country. They had no debt. There's no country on earth that doesn't have debt, but Libya didn't have debt. Libya gave some of the oil money back to all the citizens. Libya armed the whole country and had depots where if anything happened, they could go and get arms. A man who's a despot does not arm his people that they can be manipulated to come against him. But the moment he gave up his weapons of mass destruction to come in out of the cold, who came to Libya? It was Richard Pearl, who was the great
Prince of Darkness.
Prince of Darkness. And where did he go? He went directly to Benghazi, because it was from Benghazi that Gaddafi overthrew the king. He's from that area of the world. So now they never did like Gaddafi, so they started stimulating the upset, the unrest, the dissatisfaction. And I don't care how good any leader is, there's always dissatisfaction in every house.
Well, absolutely. But